Learning something I didn't know. I was going to ask where the name Sammy's came from. You are not the original founder of Sammy's?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you to our partners at Complete Kids for partnering with our platform and sponsoring this episode. Complete Kids is a Gaston County born and Belmont headquartered organization that specializes in behavioral, occupational, physical, and speech therapy for children. So if you're someone who's actually wanting to continue or begin your career in children's therapeutics, and we have opportunities for you at Complete Kids. There are careers right now for you to explore, from getting started all the way to a board certified behavioral analyst and everything in between, and being able to not only give back to the next generation of children, but continue to call Belmont your home. Complete Kids has received approval from Belmont City Council to occupy the old Belmont Middle School and will be occupying in 2023. So if you want to call the Belmont Middle School your office and be a part of this culture, giving back to the next generation of children and still having the opportunity to be in our community, then visit CompleteKids.com and select the Careers tab. Thank you again for your partnership, Complete Kids. Back to the episode. Welcome back to the Building Belmont podcast. I'm your host, Keanu Trujillo. I know it's been a little while, so happy New Year, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all of those things. We are again at another bar. So we are hanging out. You know, I was telling John, I think we're becoming kind of a bar podcast, but like anything, it starts to take on the personality of the person running the show. And I like hanging out at bars with
what's that say about you?
I love hanging out at a bar, for sure. I'll pull open a laptop, go sit at the bar, and once noon rolls around, maybe have one, two, yeah. So, and I love supporting local business. That's what I.
Hey, and we like it too.
Yes,
and I even put outlets on in front of the bar for you.
That's perfect. Yeah. Absolutely, so we're plugged in here, so you can come down here. If you are watching, then you notice that we are at Sammy's at the new speakeasy downstairs. Not new anymore. It's about a year now.
It's a little over a year old now.
It's newish. Well, it's new and compared to how long you and Sammy's have been here.
Right. Yeah.
So we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend, John Bailey. When people talk about what downtown Belmont was and what it used to be, they say there was nothing but Sammy's.
Right. Yeah.
There was just Sammy's. So we are now at Sammy's, of course, getting to know John and getting to know his story and connecting with him. And of course, he is in the community. He is accessible. So come down, have a beer, maybe two, maybe three, support local business, come hang out at Sammy's and spend some time. So thanks for having us, John. Thanks for hosting us and sharing your story. When's the last time someone asked you to tell your story?
Oh gosh, I get asked that almost every day.
Okay.
Yeah, customers always want to know. That's one of the great things about Belmont and the customers that we have here at Sammy's. People call us a bar, but we're really a family restaurant that has a bar in it. And that's at least what I like to say. And I think we do a real good job of walking that fine line. But because of the customer base that we come in and people who have, moved to Belmont recently, they all come in and they want to know what my story is.
Yeah.
It's long, convoluted, drawn out.
Well, we'll get as much of it as we can today, and so that way, then you can send them this link and say, if you have any other questions, come back and see me again. You see, it's like a lead gen. It's like follow on business.
Right. I like it.
But I'm sure a lot of that comes with, of course, one, people remember Sammy's in downtown Belmont early on.
Right.
So you've been here a while. You've built a lot of trust and loyalty in the community. You are still very plugged into the community.
Absolutely.
Obviously, a UNC Charlotte Niners fan.
Yeah, Niners.
Yeah, very, very dedicated. We'll get to that. But tell me about, what brought you to Belmont. How long have you been here now exactly?
Well, so I grew up in eastern Gaston County, mostly Mount Holly. We lived in Gastonia for a while. I went to East Gaston. I don't know. But, I was a general contractor for the most part in my adult life. And when the recession of 2008 kind of came along, I was actually in a very good position. I was repairing foreclosures for banks.
Okay.
And, it was kind of odd. They told me in 2008, you've got 7 years. And so, as 2015 was kind of looming in the headlights, I was looking for something else to get into. And I had moved to Blowing Rock. And one of my buddies, Rob Presley, who was a commercial realtor, came up, and I was having dinner with him. And he told me that he was going to be listing Sammy's for sale for Sammy Balazzias. And started asking some questions, and now here we are 7 years later.
Okay.
6.5, yeah.
So I am already learning something I didn't know. I was going to ask where the name Sammy's came from. You are not the original founder of Sammy's?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So it's been around for, I think 17, 18 years, somewhere around in there. I have to do the math, but it's pretty close. We'll go with 17.
Okay. So we'll get to know a little bit about Sammy
Balatius.
Balatius.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great guy.
So in that space, of course, 2008, you're in real estate. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs that I've met, one of them you would know, of course, Preston Wilson,
Oh, yeah.
who designed this space.
Yeah.
He got into the space for a little while in a restaurant.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's someone I deeply admire and respect. He said, I would never do
guy.
it again.
Yeah, great guy.
So-
I've been in general contracting. I've run car dealerships and now restaurants, and this is by far the hardest business I've ever been in.
So you're still in it.
Yeah.
You're growing. You're,
Yeah.
you're successful. What about it makes you want to stay?
Well, so I will tell you that Sammy built a very solid foundation. You're going to hear me, relate a lot of things back to sort of my building background. And Sammy built a really solid foundation here, and he made it as easy as it can be in the restaurant business. And he put systems in place, and I basically learned from him, who he learned from his father. He grew up in the restaurant business, and we between the systems that Sammy put in place and the great location and just Belmont in general, this would be one of the easier restaurants to run. Still doesn't make it easy, but it's easier compared to some other ones. So we're very blessed to have this location. We're very blessed to have the foundation beneath us that Sammy laid. And I did not know Sammy before I bought the business from him. I knew who he was. I'd eaten here a million times, but I didn't know him. But through that whole buy-sell process, he actually became one of my very good friends. And I wouldn't tell you he and I talk every day, but we talk a fair amount.
Yeah.
So he's a great guy. Great guy.
How long had Sammy's? When was it originally established?
2005, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been around a bit.
So you ultimately purchased when? 2008, 2009?
No, it was later than that. It was around 2016. I
Okay.
think it was. So 6.5 years, I think
Yeah.
we've been here. It was in May of 2016, I think it was.
So what did it mean then to step in and carry forward the name and the process
Yeah.
and what he had already established? I mean, did you make any, obviously you added the speakeasy, but were there a lot of changes when you took over? I mean, what did it mean to preserve that or carry that forward?
Well, and my philosophy was it's not broken. I'm not going to fix it. Again, Sammy had sort of made it easy for me to step in. Now, I had never been in the restaurant business before in my life. Had a friend at the time who had been, and when I started looking at this, I called him and asked him if he would come run it. He said yes. And so between he and Sammy, I was able to sort of pick it up, and he's since moved on. And, we're still here and got a great general manager, Amanda Smith. I mean, she's not my right hand. She's probably the whole right side of my body. I don't know what I would do without her, but she does a fantastic job running the place for us.
Yeah. Had an opportunity to work with her in planning events down here,
Right,
which
yeah.
of course you do. It's a big part of the space here specifically is for events. And yes, she's incredibly helpful. And, on that note, of course, I want you to be able to share and promote more of your business. You don't need any more introductions, but if we can make one, we're glad to help. So this space is dedicated for events. Tell me about, or it's a big part of it. Tell me about what inspired wanting to use this space or add this space downstairs.
Well, the funny thing was we actually wanted to put a rooftop bar on. And, as a general contractor, I started looking at it and talked to Preston. And he and I started kicking around different ways to do it. We talked to code enforcement. And we figured out that we could get a rooftop bar with about 50 seats up there. And eventually, though, when we really started doing the deep dive on it, we were going to lose about 30 seats in the restaurant. And I was afraid that it would just change the feel of the restaurant too much, because restaurants, they have a feel to them, and people grow comfortable and accustomed to that feel. And I was worried about changing the feel for a net gain of 20 seats. And there were 20 seats that I wouldn't get to use a lot. Even if I put a roof over it and drop sides and all that good stuff, there's still outdoor seating, and if super cold or super hot, they're not going to be used. And to monetize each seat, it just didn't feel like it was the right decision. So we have this full basement here beneath Sammy's. Upstairs is 2,500 square feet. The basement's 2,500 square feet. And in the course of running a restaurant, equipment has to be replaced. And it got time to a point where we needed to replace some coolers and a freezer. And so we just sat down with the equipment supplier and made better, more efficient use of the space with the equipment as we replaced it. And that opened up this space, and we were able to turn it into another almost 40 seats.
Okay. How long had you been envisioning an addition, whether that be rooftop or even here?
From day 2.
Okay. Okay.
You always want more seats. Seats are money in the restaurant business. And so the more seats we can get in, and you've got to be cognizant of things, like can the kitchen handle that many more seats? So we have to be very careful. For example, if you're going to have an event down here and we're going to pack this room, the last thing I want to do is send 40 tickets upstairs to the kitchen all at one time. You'd all get your meals at different times. So with those bigger events like that, we try to do a buffet style. It helps the kitchen and it helps the customers all eat at the same time, makes them happier. So, you have to think about all the logistics behind putting new seats in. It's not just, hey, we can fit a chair right there. Let's put a table there. It doesn't quite work that way.
So some in-house catering for the events down
Yeah,
here.
basically. Mm-hmm.
And you had a big December, you were telling me. How many events total did you?
Close to 50, yeah.
But there are only 31 days.
Well,
Minus Christmas.
We had some at lunch, some at dinner.
Okay.
So there were quite a few days where we doubled up and had lunch events and dinner events. So,
That's pretty good.
yeah, it's a great space down here. And you can see we still have some Christmas decorations up, and we actually had a birthday party in here just a few days ago, and still have some of the birthday regalia up as well.
Yeah, well, it's set up for a party, so if someone needs to book a birthday party, the decorations come with the space right now. So
That's right.
limited
It's going
time
down.
only, right?
That's right. And when it's not being used for parties, we have it open as a speakeasy. It's open from Thursday to Saturday, usually around 5 o'clock. We've got the British phone booth up there in the corner, and it says telephone up above the door. And if that light is on, that's your key that the speakeasy is open.
Okay, I hadn't noticed that. Yeah. Now I know.
Now you know.
I'll just usually come and peek and see, and if it's dark, I guess it's closed.
Yeah.
Well,
it's all right.
Let's talk about your story as far as getting into business and entrepreneurship. It's something that I'm so intrigued to learn people's story in general, but especially those that build businesses. Where did you get your start in your career that ultimately led you into general contracting?
Well, so I am an alum from UNC Charlotte. I have a civil engineering degree.
Now it makes sense.
And the funny thing was, I actually wanted to be a pilot, and so I was in the North Carolina International Guard. Got selected to go to pilot training, and unfortunately, I started getting airsick. And the Air Force was kind of funny. They didn't like their pilots soiling the aircraft.
Okay.
So that did not work out. Came home, tried to figure out something else to do. Got into building houses for a couple of builders in Charlotte, where I learned construction, and one thing led to another, and I got my general contractor's license, and here we are. Still doing a little bit of that. We have a house or two under construction here and there, but mostly the restaurant takes up most of my time.
Who or what was the kind of the catalyst that said, hey, maybe general contractor seems like a good path? Was that?
Well, I had that civil engineering degree because back in the 90s, the Air Force had way more pilots than they had airplanes. So it was very competitive, and they wanted their pilots to have technical degrees. I liked Lincoln Logs and Legos when I was a kid, so civil engineering it was. And so then I was sitting around when I got back from pilot training with a civil engineering degree, and I knew I didn't want to sit in front of a computer and design bridges and roads. So my father had helped my grandfather, who was a carpenter. So I had a little bit of sawdust in my hair back when I had hair. And, I ended up getting into home building. And I love it. I still like and enjoy home building.
Did you start with someone else, or did you go all in immediately?
Yeah, no. I started for a company that is no longer in business. The recession took care of them, unfortunately. It was called William Trotter Company, and had been in business since 1959. Wow. And learned from Mr. Trotter and his son Paul on how to build that business, and I learned so much. And then also they had a superintendent who's from Belmont. His family still lives here. His name was Ken Bogle. His son Ed Bogle is an attorney in Gastonia, and I think I was 24 when I started at Trotter, and my second day on the job, I climbed into Ken Bogle's truck, and he looked at me and he said, "Son, how old are you?" And I said, 24. He said, well, I've been a superintendent at Trotter for 25 years. I got your point, sir. Yes, sir. So that's my Ken Bogle story, and again, a Belmont native. And Ken and I are still friends to this day, and I'm good friends with his son, Ed. So, but yeah, that's how I got into general contracting and building houses. And then eventually, somewhere around 1999, I started building houses on my own, and then kind of got sidetracked, got into the car industry for a little while. Got into management, into Toyota dealerships, that sort of thing. Moved away for a bit, and moved back to this area in around 2007. And that's when I was repairing foreclosures again.
So when you were starting to build your own homes there in the beginning, and then getting into the car industry, were you doing both? It was kind of a side hustle?
No, the reason I got into the car business was my best friend at the time from high school, college. He had grown up in the car business. His dad owned a Toyota dealership, and he kept trying to get me in the car business. Like, come on, man, you need to get in. Like, nobody likes car dealers. You're lucky I'm your friend, But eventually, he was able to buy his own dealership and moved down to Augusta, Georgia, and walked in his office the first day and, okay, boss, what do I do? And he said, you're the used car manager. Great, what do I do? So I got some very, very in-depth, very quick on-the-job training on how to be a used car manager, and took it off from there. I mean, we ended up doing really well, and then ended up in St. Louis for a while and running a dealership there, and then kind of saw the writing on the wall and figured I needed to do something else because I was worried about what I saw in the economy. And fortunately, played my poker hand well and got into repairing foreclosures.
And were you projecting what was going on in the economy? Was that really good timing? I mean, every time you look back on something in business, you can almost say, oh, yeah, it was really good strategy. And then sometimes, man, that was a hope and a prayer. So did you see that coming?
A little bit of both. I remember this quote by one of the Rockefellers who didn't get killed in the crash of 1929. He said something to the effect of, when he heard about all the shoeshine boys and elevator boys talking about the killing they were making in the market, he got out. Well, I saw, every plumber's helper and mason's apprentice getting their general contractor's license, and that was one of the reasons that I got out of general contracting and got into the car business. And I just kind of kept an eye on it, and I'm like, ooh, something's not looking right here. And there's always been foreclosures. I mean, even now in this economy and in this market, there are still foreclosures, and we still repair some for Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, some of those banks. And I just kind of thought I saw something coming and played that hand. And I mean, it was sort of a wing and a prayer, sort of some experience, but it turned out well for me. So many people got hurt during that time, and that's sad for our economy. But I was able to take a business that started out as just me, and the next thing I know, we had over 100 employees. Wow. And our largest year repaired over 2,000 houses. We were covering all of North Carolina and South Carolina, a little bit of Georgia, a little bit of Tennessee, and I was able to employ some people who may not have had a job otherwise because they were all in the construction industry, and there was next to no construction going on at this point in time.
You left me with about 3 or 4 questions here. I do have a question about when people say sales in a negative sense, they say like a used car salesman. Yep. So I want to ask you about your sales experience. Yeah. But before we leave that train that you were on there, tell me about, as much as you can remember, the connection or the relationships you had to build to get into being the guy that was repairing foreclosures, because that was a strategy that was very specific and niched.
Right.
How did you get into that space?
Well, my father actually knew a realtor who was handling corporate relos at the time. Bank of America buys your house and move you to Boston, and say, oh, Keanu's got a great house, but he had some pink shag carpet and green walls. We need to neutralize that out a little bit. And so that's how we really got started, was going in and taking care of issues like that. And in this particular company, the person who handled corporate reloads sat right beside the person who handled foreclosures. And as the economy started to shift, the person handling foreclosures needed more general contracting help. My name basically got passed from one person to the next. And corporate reloads went away and foreclosures went through the roof. And for a long time, I'll say the first 2 years, I wouldn't tell anybody what I did because I was afraid they might try to do it as well. And then I realized that at some point, I'll be happy to tell you what I do because there's no way you're getting in because it became locked down. I mean, the banks did not want to deal with any more general contractors because they had so many banging on their door. And those of us who were fortunate enough to get in, were in. And as long as you did a good job and did what you said you were going to do, you took care of the banks took care of you.
Yeah.
It ended up being a great relationship for the business and for my family. It really allowed me to provide at a high level for my family and for other families as well who were our employees. So.
I ask that specific question because the purpose of our platform here is creating connections, and I think even in being able to be an example or a model of what it looks like to create that kind of connection, people wouldn't know that, or people wouldn't ask, well, how did you get in there? And so you mentioned in the beginning you came into ownership of Sammy's because of a buddy, Rob,
right? Yeah.
And then you came into this strategy because of a friend's dad.
Yeah, my dad knew someone. Yeah.
Yes, and so being intentional with those relationships, obviously. Right. They didn't come tap on your shoulder because you were staying to yourself and you didn't care about people and you weren't building relationships. So it sounds like you were intentional to build relationships. And Belmont is an area where if you're not willing to get out, now the community will embrace you, but you got to be willing to embrace the community.
Yeah.
So how important has that been both in your story, but also as you see the way the community operates here from a business standpoint?
Yeah.
How important are the relationships that we're building?
Super critical, and I've got to say I have to hand it to my dad. I learned that relationship building. He's the master at it. I'll never be as good as he is. He can talk to anybody and have a great conversation. I have to struggle. I struggle with it a little bit. I'm a little more introverted.
I couldn't tell.
I have to flip that light switch when I come through the door and change my personality type. But one of the things that was very important to me when I bought Sammy's was to make sure that we gave back to the community. And I think that most people will tell you if they know Sammy's, they know that we're always looking for a way to give back. I remember a few years ago, it was a very sad story. We had the family that got killed in the car wreck on 485. There were 4 out of 5 of this family members were killed, and it left a 14-year-old boy without his parents and his siblings. And this was during COVID. Wow. And the town allowed us to close Mill Street. We put a big tent over there and a bunch of outdoor seating so that we could accommodate a crowd. And we raised, I want to say it was $14,000 or $15,000 to go to this child and the family that he had left. And I didn't write that check. That was the community coming in. And what we did was, we donated like $5 for every special we sold. And I have no idea how many we sold. It was just nuts. But people were just coming in and saying, give this to them, give this to them, give this to them. And, that's something that we've always sort of done. We used to do this thing, and we'll probably get back into it in a not too distant future, called Celebrity Chef. We've had everybody from the sheriff to county commissioners to the mayor, the town manager come in, and they've all got their nonprofit that they want to help, and we the football team at South Point. We had some of the offensive captains as our celebrity chef, or the defensive captains to be the celebrity chef, and we donate $5 for every special that we sell. Now it's incumbent upon that celebrity chef to drive those people in too, but it's just something that we want to do just as a way to give back and take care of the community, and it helps us. It gets our name out there and makes people want to come in and eat at Sammy's. And ultimately, we're in business here to make money. It's more than just a hobby. So it's twofold for us, in that we are able to give back, and it's good advertising as well.
Yeah. I was sitting at you said something there, and again, you're leaving me with even more questions. We're gonna have to do 2, 3, 4 more episodes when we're out of dry January, and we'll actually have some drinks in us. I was sitting at the coffee shop the other day, and I overheard a guy say, he's on a Zoom meeting or whatever. Well, candidly, the purpose of a business is to make money. Mm-hmm. And of course, I agree. You can't continue to exist without making the money.
Right.
But
it doesn't mean you can't be a good corporate citizen.
That's right. So beyond the purpose of the business making money, your business makes money, and it leverages that money to support the community.
Yeah.
And so the ultimate purpose would then be the end result, which is the support of the community, not making the money. The money is just the seed, right?
Yeah.
So beyond great marketing, which it is, I don't hear that it's a strategy for you to get involved in the community. You genuinely care about the community.
Absolutely.
So why do it at all? I mean, even with the tragic accident with the kid left behind, what stirred in you, John Bailey, to say, I can do something, I'm going to do something?
Well, Sammy's gives me a little bit of a platform. And so many times I've heard people say, I want to help, I just don't know what to do. Well, because I have this platform, I can figure out what to do. This platform has allowed me to meet a lot of people in the community that I wouldn't have met otherwise, or even people in state, local government. So if I don't know what to do, I can call someone that I already know, and they'll tell me what we can do. So things like, helping that family out. Put something on Facebook, and because Sammy's has got, I don't know, 10, 11,000 followers. Hey, we want to help. Anybody know anybody? Well, next thing I know, that family's contacting me. Yeah, you can help us. And what do you want to do? Well, here's my idea. You okay with it? Oh, that's great. Yeah. And so, lots of times that's sort of the driving factor in me to want to do that. So many people go, I want to help, but I don't know what to do. Okay, well, we can figure that out.
Yeah,
that's easy. But it's easy because I have the platform to do it. And I actually really, really like being involved with the community and giving back to the community. And a good example of why I like that is look at COVID. The governor shut us down on St. Patrick's Day. That is our busiest day of the year. And I can't tell you how much beer was stored right behind that wall right there. And I thought I was going to start crying when I walked down here at 5 o'clock when we had to shut down. I looked at all that beer. It broke my heart. I'm like, I'm going to be pouring all this crap out. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I think that was a Thursday. It was maybe a Wednesday. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, shortly thereafter was a Friday, and we had a line in Sammy's of people coming in to get to-go food that went out the front door, wrapped around the side of the building, went down Mill Street, almost to the parking lot. The community was here to take care of us. And, I can remember it was embarrassing how long the wait was for people. It was almost 2 hours. And I remember after that Friday, that night, we had a manager's meeting. I'm like, we're fixing this crap. We're not doing this again. What do we have to do? And to my staff's credit, and they deserve all the credit, they fixed it. And every weekend after that, the wait went down. We were still doing a lot of business, but the wait went down tremendously. And we just geared up to be, to go only. And I can remember my accountant calling me just after, every month we give him the information for our, P&L. And he called me after April, and he said, did you give me everything? Yeah, I give you the same stuff every month. He's like, well, you're actually making a little bit of money. I was like, oh, thank God. So, the community really stepped up during COVID and took care of us. And I think a lot of restaurants up and down Main Street would tell you the same thing. You just repeat the same story, change the name.
Yeah.
Because this community really took care of the restaurants at a time when we needed taking care of. And so, we're going to have breaking news right here.
Okay.
Probably in the next week or two, we're going to have a customer appreciation day where we're going to do something where every special is going to be like $4. It's just our way of giving back and saying, hey, thanks. We haven't forgotten.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm bringing everyone.
Bring
Let us know the date, and so we can get this episode out before then, because that's very exciting. And at the same time, I think about, you did what you did for the community, or began doing what you were doing for the community before COVID.
Yeah.
And then in a way, the community gave it back. And then and now you're giving it back. Like a true and proper partnership. A partnership is not about what you get. It's about what you give. So if we're partners,
it has to be a win-win.
I'm going to give to you knowing you're going to give to me. But if I'm focusing on taking care of me and you're focusing on taking care of you, eventually we're going to part ways.
Right.
And what I've noticed in business, and really what really inspired the podcast, I got to know Summer and Preston's story, who I was very, very fortunate. I didn't know it at the time. I know now. They were our very first friends in Gaston County.
Oh, yeah, right.
Summer and Preston Wilson.
Crazy.
Right? Like the lottery of friends.
Yeah.
But genuinely, I got to know their story and started to see how they plugged in with the community and what it meant to them. And then even now today, years later, I'm hearing your story, and it's almost a similar spirit. It's a similar passion. But you don't find that in other places. I mean, even these other communities, I moved here to work with the church that's plugged into several communities in the area. You don't see that level of buy-in in these other communities like like Norman, Concord. Maybe Matthews has and like Davidson have a closer vibe, but I still don't get people saying, hey, that's my community, you know? So there's something about it that sets it apart. And you mentioned earlier something that was a very, very awesome take. I had not heard this before, didn't even think about it to fathom it. Do you want to share again what makes Belmont different as far as the origin, the inception?
Well, again, it's my take on it. So
it's a good take.
I hope it's factual. But yeah, I think it speaks to the foundation. Here I go with the building analogies again, but
we are called Building Belmont, so make yourself at home.
Perfect. That whole building analogy and why people buy in, and I think it's because people like the Stowe family bought into the community. You know, I was saying that one of the differences, because I grew up in Mount Holly, one of the differences between Belmont and Mount Holly was that the owners of the mills actually lived in Belmont. The Stowe family, they were here, and they had to walk up and down the street and see their employees. And I think that created sort of, hey, we need to make sure that these people have a good quality of life. Over in Mount Holly with American Neeford, great employers. My entire family worked, including me, worked in American Neeford Mills at some point in their life. And it's not any sort of disparaging remark against American Neeford, but the owners did not live in Mount Holly. And so Mount Holly didn't have a downtown park like Stowe Park. And Stowe Park is one of those things that makes Belmont. And so people like the Stowe family bought into making Belmont a great place to live, and they built a good, solid foundation. And I think we really have to tip our caps back to people like the Stowe family and putting that foundation in place, that infrastructure, to make Belmont have that solid foundation so that as generations continued and leadership from city council and mayors from times past all the way up through present day had this fantastic, large foundation that they could build upon that really made Belmont what it is today. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that's sort of the vibe that the town has that stems from that. People buying in to make Belmont a better place to live. And I'm not the only business in town that tries to give back to the community. There are a lot that do that, and it's that in general, I think, that really makes Belmont special. I mean, we can say it's great because we're between two rivers and we've got all this waterfront property. That's fabulous, great. We got a great recreation area over there, wonderful, and that's certainly part of it. But I really feel like it's the attitude of the people, and even though Belmont's growing, I think for the most part, those people coming in, they pick up on that, and that's part of why they want to live here, and hopefully they buy in as well, and we continue having Belmont be Belmont.
Yeah, there's so much to your perspective or your take that adds to even that foundation of understanding why Belmont is the way it is, why it was built the way it was built, but also why it is the way it is now. You are not from here, you're from Mount Holly. Mm-hmm. So we can't say you're technically a hometowner kind of defending it, right? You lived in that community and got to experience it and then be here in this culture.
Right.
And then, of course, because you are a business owner here, I had a wise man tell me once that certain things can't be taught, they have to be caught. And I think in Belmont, there's a culture that is caught that says, I want to care for this community. I want to plug into this community. I don't want this to be a place that I live or own real estate. I want to be involved. And now I see that has been in the air from an early place because the Stowe's having to see the quality of life of their employees, but also, hey, I am there. Right. It could have just been transactional dollars and cents. Mm-hmm. Like you said, that whole park could have been a great real estate investment right?
Make some, great storefront.
Absolutely.
Right there on Main Street. But no, we took that and dedicated it to the quality of life of the citizens as opposed to, quality of life for merchants, so to speak.
Well, you see now the way that Belmont has grown, and it is growing, and it will continue to grow. And there's all kinds of perspectives on that. One thing that I heard recently that was the most probably true statement I've ever heard is everyone wants to be the last one in. It's
Yeah.
like I want to be the last one over the bridge, then I want to raise the drawbridge and say no one else, right? But that mindset, I think it's loud, but it actually pales in comparison to the actual majority of people. They care about people getting to plug in here and getting to call it home like themselves. And I'm not from here. I'm from way, way, way western Carolina, called New Mexico, right? Way out there. And yet,
I like New Mexico. It's beautiful.
Beautiful culturally. But I feel more at home here. I was just back home for a couple of weeks for the holidays, and I feel more at home here because there, those communities, unless you come from a really small town, you don't know each other like that. And maybe it's just the culture. If you do, you don't know each other well. Right. Someone mentioned it recently in a quote. They said Abraham Lincoln said, he had a quote that said, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. For the most part, I feel like that's how Belmont is. I hear this thing, but I want to get to know you better personally. Where I come from, very, very small town, I don't like him. Everything people are saying must be true, right? So there's this divide, but here people are close and they connect. And I see even myself and my wife just being here for 5 years, most of my business is remote. I don't have to be here. She's a teacher. She can be anywhere. All of our family is in Southwest New Mexico, right? Well, Southwest, Northern New Mexico. We miss them, but this is home. And it's because we picked up on that culture, because it invited us in, but it also taught us how to care for this community. And I'm not where I am now if it weren't for those people that have a similar heart passion to you. Summer, Preston, John Logan's one of them. And so you look at this community and how it has happened. I will tell you, as someone who's been here and serving the community for a long time, that new people are picking up on that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Had a friend at Friday Night Live this last summer. Right, was up in Upper Stowe, and so you're kind of looking at the middle school. And he had a brother that lives in a neighboring community that doesn't think the way we think, and said, why don't they just demolish that and redevelop on it? And this person that lives here, only been here for a couple of years, told him that's not how we do it in Belmont. They're going to turn that into, starts telling them about how they're going to repurpose it. And that is, there's a way of moving forward, but also honoring what was. And I feel like Belmont has really struck that balance. But you've been here a lot longer than I have, would you say?
I will tell you that is very much the case. And to the newcomers in the town, I feel like, look, you moved here for a reason. Pay attention. There's a reason that we're successful, and if you'll pick up what we're putting down, you're in. And I hope that people will continue to do that and keep Belmont. And when I was a kid, a lot of these houses on Main Street were falling in. It wasn't pretty. But we had some visionaries, city council and corporate leaders who came in and said, look, we've got a great foundation. Let's build upon it and make it something special. And, tip your cap to those folks as well, because they did a great job. And, we can talk about the Stows and everything that they did, but, there were people who came after them who built upon that foundation. And hopefully we as corporate leaders and our political leaders as well are continuing to grow and expand. But still, again, remembering that we're on a foundation that someone else built, and honoring that, like you said, and again, to the newcomers, just pick up what we're putting down, man. It's something special.
You just gave a message I think our nation needs to hear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you meant it like that, but that's what it made me think, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Beyond all of this, the foundation that we are built on is important.
Yeah.
And I say that, again, people are so quick to diminish your perspective because they don't know where you come from. Yeah. Whether physically or mentally or economically or whatever. I say that being someone raised, I actually did my ancestry recently. I've been dying to do it because people don't know what I am. And, I didn't really know Spanish, kind of, right. Mexican, Native American. So I finally did it, and I traced my family all the way back to the early 1600s in the New Mexico territory, right? Which was, of course, Mexico at that time.
Right, of course.
And I served. Loved my country, loved what it's done for me. Absolutely a patriot. Still cry every time I listen to hear the national anthem in person. It's like it just kind of gets you. You served as well. Thank you. There is a great love for that. And, this is the first time we've zoomed out of Belmont to think of our nation. But I think it's something that people need to think about, that, it applies here. We can't do anything about that. but we sure can about, our relationships
Right,
here.
and this is where it needs to start. Think globally, act locally. I mean, that's nothing new, right? And I think that I watch the news just like a lot of people do, and I cry sometimes for our nation and wonder where we're going. But quite honestly, to me, if and we can speak to it in Belmont too. I mean, we've talked about how Belmont's growing, and some people are just totally against it. It's not the way it used to be. Well, I have family who grew up in Belmont. I mean, I can name some names of my family, and if you're from Belmont, you know who they are. Last name's Bailey. You'll figure that out. But if we truly have the betterment of the community at heart, I don't care from which direction you're coming from, left or right, we can probably find some common ground 90% of the time. Yeah. And if you've just got an issue that you're going to fall on your sword about, all right, okay, let's figure it out. But if we say we want what's best for Belmont and we want what's best for this community, we'll figure it out. It might take some time, we might argue a little bit. Families do, right? But eventually we figure out where we're going, we hug it out, and we've got a path. And I wish our nation would do that, but I think we do a pretty good job of that in Belmont.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for creating a culture that, whether you obviously didn't know it at the time, but the investment for you to pick up where Sammy left off and carry Sammy's forward. And
I can't thank Sammy enough for the business that he built and the honor he did in selling it to me. Truly.
I'm curious to know, why did Rob reach out to you? Because Rob's very plugged in this community. Why did he think you were the right guy? I feel like that was very intentional.
I think that knowing Rob, he was just talking. He was just talking, and it just happened that he might not even have known that he struck a chord when he was talking. But, all of a sudden it was just like, hey, wait a minute. I'm looking to diversify because I knew those foreclosures weren't going to be there forever, and I needed to figure out a way to replace some of that income that I knew was going to leave. Mm-hmm. And, right place, right time, right comment. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. If you don't know Rob Presley, you can go back to one of our earlier episodes. I think it's our second episode. We had Rob on to talk about the Belmont Trolley. So he's the one. He's the first person that I had heard the phrase thoughtful development or developing thoughtfully. Yeah. Right. Saying, hey, we're going to grow. We should at least be intentional to say how we grow.
His dad was the king of that.
And it's back to what is caught. We're all walking in those sacrifices that someone else made for us to be able to be here like that. And, so get to know Rob there, but at the same time, there aren't many things in this community that you can't find his fingerprints on.
Yeah. And he's a legacy of that. His father, Tony, did great things in South End and turned it, built that foundation for what it is today. So Rob learned at the knee of the master, so to speak. And Rob's doing a great job of carrying that tradition on with that business. And his brother Andy, they've got the real estate or the residential side, and matter of fact, my next meeting is with Rob.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rob. I don't know how he's going to enjoy us talking about him, but I think that the Bible would say, don't speak well of yourself, let others do it for you. Yeah. To some degree, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. I don't mind speaking well of Rob, and at the same time, you can't go very far without knowing about John Bailey. Or knowing about Sammy's. And again, there was a lot that came and helped to grow here in this community. And you, again, investing the way you do and doing what you do here, in some ways, I'm walking in your legacy. And I do mean that because,
I don't
again,
like to hear that.
Well, I have to say it, and I know that this stuff will exist forever because the internet is forever.
Right, yeah.
I just think that it's important that we understand that the legacy that we leave behind isn't in the big thing that we leave. It's in the little moments daily. And so some of the things that you've done through our community, those little things, they help to cultivate the environment that when my wife and I got here 5 years ago, we say, well, this is a place we want to stay. And even now to say, that's someone I want to get to know. That's someone that I want to have a conversation with. We'll just hit record so all these people can hear it too.
Right.
So, thank you for what you've done. And again, cultivating that environment, because then it translates into your employees and your managers. And even some people that may come work with you for a couple months over summer break, they're going to learn something from your leadership that will then carry in the community. And maybe that person does something that impacts my children. Right.
Well, that's the best thing that could happen. Right, somebody leave here with just an acorn, turn into an oak. That's what I want for people. People did that for me, and it's time to pay it forward. And Belmont is the perfect place to make those things happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for spending the time. You've shared so much. I think we're coming out strong with our episodes in the new year. Great story and also great connection. There's so much I still want to get to know about you. I did not forget about the sales question. We'll revisit that one again over a beer. But thank you for what you're doing and how you're carrying it forward. Anything else that you'd want to share with the community? Let's say you have the ear of every person in Belmont right now.
That's a great question, and my answer to it is just thank you. Thank you, Belmont. Because I truly love being a part of this community. I really do. It's custom made for me. This restaurant just gives me the platform that allows me to do things that I enjoy doing, which is primarily helping people. But Belmont has supported all of that. I can sit here and have all the celebrity chefs I want, but if people don't come through the door, what have I really done? And, I don't look at it as something that necessarily I do. I give Belmont the opportunity to do it. And Belmont steps up and takes advantage of those things. It's not John Bailey. It's Belmont. I just, unlock the door and let them come on in.
You're a very humble man. I'll tell you a story about a guy. He was a farmer. He had a bunch of land, had built a farm, and a preacher comes over to his place and says, "Wow, God really did bless you with this farm." And he said, "Yeah, well, you should have seen it when only he had it." Right? It was just blank land. Yeah. So it's like God needs people to, or, whatever, again, everyone believes in. The world needs people like you to step in and carry it forward. So I do appreciate you and thank you for, I wonder what most people would say. I think I'm going to start incorporating that in every episode. What do you have to say for the community every year's listening? For you to say thank you says a lot about who you are. So,
it's truly, I can't think of anything else other than thank you.
I appreciate you, John. Come and visit John at
please.
Sammy's. You also have a location in Dallas.
We do.
Second location there. The Speakeasy is available for events. Let's see, there was 50 events. There were 50 events in December. I think maybe we can try and top it in February. I don't know what's going on. But,
we'll try.
Either way, the community is going to have your back. But come in and visit. And if you see John, now you can put a face to a name, although that probably wasn't hard to do before. So make sure you're watching us on YouTube to get to see this beautiful smiling face and his support for his UNC Charlotte 49ers. But thank you all again for joining us on another episode of Building Belmont. If you have questions specifically for John, let us know in social media or however, stop us in the community. But again, thank you, John, for what you've done, and thank you for what you continue to do.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Cheers. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Building Belmont podcast. I'm your host, Keanu Trujillo, reminding you to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And of course, share with a friend, share with a neighbor. We'll see you again next week as we capture more stories, create more connection, and share more information here on the Building Belmont podcast.